Everybody has a time in their life when they realize that they're only human and that they're not Superman, and that moment is always terrifying. That moment is never just solely one moment, because that's a big realization to have, and usually when you realize that, it comes in chunks and you'll forget some of it and then you'll re-remember it. Just sort of like how the first half of each school year is just spent doing review that you learned at the second half of the previous school year. Because we forget, and so we spend so much time learning and relearning. Essentially, when I first had my realization that I wasn't Superman, I went through a midlife crisis, which is bizarre considering I'm only 17. I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to change the world and leave it a better place than it was when I entered in. And I went through a time where I was like, what's even the point? Why am I even here? If I'm not going to change the world, then what am I for? And it's not like there was ever a point in which I thought I could overcome the world, or that I was better than anyone else, or that I was super, but the fact that mortality exists and is something that unites all life really hits you, and it hits you in a weird way. You knew it, but you didn't necessarily know what it meant. And struggling with depression is one of those weird things. I don't know, I've never had like a very bad case of it, but, well, I guess I have tried to kill myself once, and I have cut before and stuff, but, like, I was never diagnosed with it. Maybe that was just teen angst. I'm not really sure, but I have struggled with something like that in the past, and I don't know. It's complicated. The whole thing is really complicated, because you're not sure what death means, but you know what life means, and it gets to a point where you'd rather experience something that you don't know for a while as opposed to what you do know to be horrible. You think, hey, if I'm mortal, then what's even the point, right? It seems like you're living just waiting around to die. And it's funny because a lot of Christians have that attitude too, but they don't come out and say it. A lot of Christians act like after the fall, we're just standing around waiting to be with God in heaven, like the whole world can burn, and like we're not supposed to take care of the earth, and like our bodies are just is just a form of transportation for our heads. And they say that this world doesn't matter at all, but I would completely disagree. I love God more than anything, and I read my Bible, but I don't think that God made a mistake in creating this world, and I don't think that he does pointless things. I don't believe that anymore anyway. So then what does mortality mean? I mean, if we're not Superman, if we have to deal with things like everyone else, if there's not always a promise of succeeding in the ways that we think we're going to succeed in the ways that we define success, what do we do with the realization that we have insufficiencies? I think that the only thing we can do is try to find hope in that. From a Christian perspective, you can find hope in that because, I mean, when you think about it, if you're broken, and if you're breaking, and if you're making mistakes, and if you're imperfect, and if you're human, if you're only human, how incredible does that make God? And how much must he make up for our insufficiencies by being completely sufficient, by being perfect, by being whole, and then loving us? He loves us. He loves us. I mean, that is the whole basis for Christianity. Love. Like, Jesus said that this, like, all of his commands could be summed up in one thing, love, which is pretty groundbreaking considering 1 John 4:19. 1 John 4:19 says that we love because he first loved us. Please understand me and think that that means that we love God because he first loved us. It's not about owing. We don't owe God anything because, I mean, Jesus Christ paid the price for us and we are no longer in debt to anyone. What that verse means, we love because he first loved us, was that we are able to love at all. We are capable of love, period, because he gives us love to, like, give back to him and everyone else. Which means if everyone can love, Christian and non-Christian, then God loves everyone. Pretty tight, right? He loves a bunch of people that are only human. If he loves a bunch of non-Supermen, and he's the only one that can truly know us enough to judge us correctly and to put value on us, to define our value, then that must mean our whole lives, all the happy, all the good in them, it's all mercy. And that frees us from insecurity. And why? Because God, the God of the universe, the God that made us, that sees us and that loves us and that knows us more than we ourselves do, if he loves us, then, I mean, what left is there to obtain? I mean, we don't have to try to please other people to gain acceptance, because we are already loved by the one who sees us clearly. How wonderful is that? I'm not trying to make it sound like I understand it all, because I don't, and like I said at the beginning of this video, this is something I'm going to have to keep learning for the rest of my life, because I'm going to stumble, and I'm going to care what other people think, and I'm going to be hurt, and I'm going to be broken, and I'm going to be scared of the concept of running out of time. And I'm going to be broken, and I'm going to be breaking, and I'm going to be human. But I'm going to keep learning. And eventually I think I'm going to be okay with that. I think I'm going to be happy with it. Because God's grace covers all of my insufficiencies and all of everything that I do badly, He makes up for in how great He is. And He loves me. And He loves you too. He really, really does. And don't act like that doesn't mean anything. Because it means a whole lot. It means more than anything. It's the only thing that matters. You matter.